planter box, just for clarification, they're basically, I mean, you don't have any dirt in them, they're like about a foot wide, foot deep.
That's right.
And then, I don't know if they're on top of or right next to, are those steps or are those, you know, you got little wood boxes, were they steps or were they wood planter boxes at what time?
They've always been steps.
They were steps.
And there's no soil in the box because we got the notice and
Okay, I was thinking that's probably
Yeah.
what happened.
I don't mind working, but I don't mind.
I don't want to do the work twice.
And I do see you do have a picture of one
Yes.
right on the application.
Right, and again, to the best of your knowledge, they were put right on the property line. I mean, basically, they're all on your property, but right.
They're certainly they're on our property, yes, and it varies.
Right.
At the closest to the road, it's on the line and it moves away from it slightly as you move back towards the lake.
And planter boxes are not a code.
Excuse me?
Planter boxes are not a code issue. Just like hardscapes.
Any more questions from the board here? If not, I would move that someone close the public hearing. Cliff moves, do we have a second? I'll second. Terry seconds. All in favor of closing this public hearing, signify by saying aye. Aye. Aye, okay. All right, moving on to the next public hearing. A public hearing for the ZBA of the Town of Sullivan will be held on Thursday, October 14th at the Town of Sullivan Office Building. Consider the application of Frank Garfello, SBL 25.1-1-35, property located at 7849 Stone Drive for an area variance requested 26.5 feet of relief from a 50-foot setback at front property line and a 35 relief from a 50-foot setback at the rear property line. Bill of Order. The above application is open for inspection at the Town of Sullivan Office Building during regular business hours. Persons wishing to appear at such a hearing may do so by person, attorney, or other representative. Frank, if you want to come up here and tell our board what you're proposing.
Which side do you go, sir? Right here?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm looking for the form that we have to fill out. Is it in the folder?
What?
Our questionnaire form, is it?
It was on top of the folder.
Yep, thank you.
I've got enough of these that I want. Sure. Oh, that's the original. This is that's the difference. All right. You want to explain your math to us?
Well, I'm not really the greatest at math, so I apologize for that. All right. I'm looking to have a pole barn built to the north of my residence. We're looking at from the roadway, measurements of 50 feet, 40 wide. The variance from the back property line doesn't meet the required 50 feet, so there'll be a variance there. I don't remember the math. I apologize for that. It was 23.5 feet, I believe, from the road. And I can't read it, I'm sorry.
I think here's where he's in trouble.
Right, the side, and
Your lot is L-shaped.
Yes, sir.
Correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
15. Is that gonna be the side property line there, or is that considered the rear? Side? Okay.
So he,
I just need the front.
you wanna come 23.5 feet up Stone Drive?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And because it's an ag lot? You can, yeah, okay.
No, from the planning board said that it says that it's a residential lot.
It's a residential in the ag district.
That's clear.
Yeah. That's not how.
Well, saying that it's a residential lot just means that there's a residence on it. If it's in an ag district, then it's subject to ag.
Right, which switches to the R40.
Okay, but it's not a singular lot. It's not a singular residential lot that he's putting that he wants to put the barn on.
So,
It's a lot in its entirety. It's not
you got
subdivided
280
into
feet,
two.
100 feet.
It's a single lot, correct.
So you got over 400 feet of
So it needs
frontage
to
on
get,
Stone
needs
Drive.
a variance both from the front setback and the side setback.
But you've got only
He's
86
only 23
feet
feet
of
off the road.
from Chestnut
Correct.
Ridge.
He's gotta get-
And you don't
yeah,
own
he's gotta
this.
get back in and get covered.
You own this and then this.
It opens back up, yep.
Okay,
It's an ag zone.
okay. So there's two potential issues that I see. There's the issue of the distance between him on Stone Drive and where he wants to put his barn, right here. This is an issue, and then probably off this back corner, that would be an issue right there.
Well, if we look at it as a side yard lot line, because you got street,
Where you're looking to put it.
even though it has a jog,
Yes, sir.
then
The head of the
that
house.
would be a 15-foot side
To the right of
setback.
the house. The house would be.
I'm looking at it right here. You're about putting it right up there. Close to the
My residence, next one up.
What's the
North.
Fifty.
See how that old garden is right there? Right there.
50-50 and 15 sides.
And what's the reason that you can't move it back so that it's flush with the front of the house?
Side property line. It'd be right on the property line from, then there's a row of trees right here. So it'd be right, there's a row of big pine trees all the way through here. And over this far, where I would like to put it, away from the driveway, so it's just not right on top of the driveway. There's trees there, and then there's that property line there.
So in order to put it further toward the back, you have to take those trees
Yes.
down? Okay, is there any reason you can't move it in from the property line, so you're kind of like 2 feet behind it, just a little bit closer to the driveway?
No. I could probably do that.
We don't like things going right on the property line.
So, yeah.
Because it leads to
But-
future generational problems.
Oh,
That's not-
because this is a separate,
No, they're the same lot. So, sir, I own Chestnut Ridge.
You own,
yeah, he owns
oh,
all the
you
way
own the
up.
lot going out?
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
So he
That's all
really
one
doesn't.
deed?
Yes, sir. I know it's a weird property.
No, that's,
Well,
there's stranger property.
This is not weird.
It just, it threw me off because
Yes,
that was drawn across like it's a separate.
So if I had moved it back further towards, like, to make it level with the garage, I'd be right on that.
No, I
So I
understand.
kinda was trying to center it right to that
Yep.
side
You
piece.
said you're worried about the side lot line, I'm like, well, you're still right on the side lot.
Yeah.
I got you.
Okay,
I
I'm
see
sorry
what
for
you
that.
Nope, you're good.
Okay.
So he needs 50 foot, so he needs 50 minus 23.5. And then on the other side,
He's compliant on the other side,
he's okay on the other corner?
with 15-foot.
Okay, all right.
So he only needs the one variance there, the front, just the front variance.
Okay, because I mean, the application said that he needed a rear or something too. 'Cause it- requesting 26.5 relief from the side setback and a 35-foot relief from the 50-foot setback at rear property line. So that's incorrect then.
It's a corner lot.
Yeah. What, that's a
That's
trapezoid
horrible.
in shape, yeah.
It's a corner lot, so you have two front setbacks.
Yeah, but he's well inside the 50 foot from the other
From,
side.
yeah, from Chestnut Ridge and then from here.
And then the 15
But
foot.
does that make it a double, does that mean that that little jog there is also considered the rear setback?
Right.
And that's why you need a variance from that? Do you need a variance from this rear
Right.
setback?
But it would be, it would be a side, which the 15 would,
It's rear from here.
But from here to here, he's got
yeah,
enough.
if we're,
If
if
you
we're saying,
consider it rear, it's.
But his property ends right,
But this is also a rear setback, and the building's gonna be that close, so that's, is that why? I mean, the question is what you determined when you showed you the plans. Were you, is that what you were determining, was that this line here?
I was, on his plan, which is what I saw.
Yep.
I told him he needed a front yard variance.
So just the front setback variance?
Because I assumed that the side yard on the jog, no, just that other one that goes
Just this
towards
little piece
Chestnut,
right here.
right,
was the side lot line.
Okay.
I can live with that,
So you need 26 and a half feet of relief.
yes. Is there anyone here to speak for or against this application? So, it was gonna be a pole barn, right? We don't have any other questions about the structure of the building or anything that matters. Board have any other questions? All right, so if we all said, I will close this public hearing. All right, thank you. We're gonna discuss this later tonight, not too long from now probably, and have a decision. You can, more than welcome to stay around, or you can call Jerry and get an answer in the morning, okay?
That's what I'll do. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time. Have a good night.
Have a good night, Mayor.
Thank you.
Didn't they used to say setbacks?
What does it say now?
Minimum yard dimensions.
Yeah,
Remember that?
yeah, it is. And then they get the setbacks after that?
I don't see anything in here that says that.
Thank you
So
so
those
much.
have the setbacks.
I thought it was the setbacks.
But it doesn't, yeah, I agree, that's not.
I'm questioning that now. I wanna see what they have online. Thank you.
The zoning area,
Are there
zoning schedule.
Are there set, I'm looking at the zoning schedule, at the, Town of Sullivan zoning schedule. It looks like they changed the language. I'm wondering if it was a glitch or if it was intentional.
There's no limitation on the size of accessory structures. Am I thinking of a different town?
Yeah, no.
The
there's not.
limitation is an accessory structure
big
without a
wall.
primary use, yeah. That's where we have those size limitations. Bless you.
God bless you.
All right, let's go and let's discuss the trellis here, the interpretation of the code for whether a trellis is a fence. Now, who has that? Yeah, okay, remember who started it
Who
last?
wrote the resolution?
This is a resolution,
Right,
proposed
so we got it
resolution.
right.
So that can, you guys are more than welcome to change it, add to it, subtract from it, whatever you feel is necessary. That's kind of just to
Larry,
get things on paper and get you started.
did you have a letter to us on this one? Where you described,
Yes, he did.
Well, where he wrote us
Yeah.
that example you're talking about, Mike?
Yeah, I thought we had something written from Larry.
We've got it someplace.
No, I think you got it, Rich.
Number 8 is good.
Letter from Larry to the board.
I think it's-
Yeah, request for interpretation.
So I guess to bring everybody up to speed, what we're discussing here tonight is, again, your last name was
Zarnecki.
Zarnacki. They requested Larry to give an interpretation of what a fence is, and the board has to decide if we consider this trellis to be a fence or a trellis. And Mr. Ball made the interpretation that it was a fence, and they challenged that or questioned that, and this board here has to make a decision. You know, remember, you had a pretty good definition of a fence there, Terry, last month. I don't know if you still have that at your fingertips.
Cliff, you weren't here last month, correct?
Here you go.
I was here.
My memory just gets better and better and better.
Fence, this is, off the internet definitions. Fence, a barrier intended to prevent escape, break, intrusion, or to mark a boundary. The next two are not, it's a receiver of stolen goods or a place where stolen goods are bought. That's, not relevant. Then, definition of a trellis, a framework of lattice work used as a screen or support for climbing plants. Construction, chiefly lattice work, an arrangement that forms or gives the effect of a lattice. Neither one of them specifically address our questions.
You're Mr. Hungate, are you?
Yes.
Well, I've looked at it twice, and I clearly feel that it is a fence. That meets the definition of, you know, a barrier stopping traffic flow.
I agree with that statement.
I agree as well, Mike.
Yeah, I think this resolution
There's
lays
a,
it out
yeah,
clearly.
yeah, there's a resolution in front of us, which we probably ought to read for the record.
Yep. Who wants to make the motion for this resolution?
I'll move it.
Okay. Motion made by Cliff.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Yeah, I don't know, again, for the sake of everyone here, I'm not sure if we need to read it all, if there's a certain part of it, I'm just looking if, you know.
Is anyone here a good speed reader?
Well, I read it before the meeting, but.
I mean, I can just summarize the beginning, and then if you wanna just read through the findings. So basically, the resolution in front of the board, this is a written resolution the board has, basically recounts the history, the procedural history of the application that, the Zarneckis applied for an interpretation to this board. The interpretation is respect to whether or not the structure on the property is a planer box with a trellis, or if it's a fence that's subject to the town's zoning code. The Zarneckis contend that the structure is a planer box with a trellis, not a fence, whereas the code enforcement officer has made the determination and interpretation that it is a fence. The board held a public hearing on September 9th and October 14th. The board reviewed numerous documents in the record, including the notice of violation, correspondence from Mr. Zarnecki to the code enforcement officer, the application for the interpretation submitted by the Zarneckis with supporting pictures, correspondence from code enforcement officer Larry Ball dated September 8th. The board also considered testimony from the Zarneckis and the owner of the neighboring property, Nathan Hungate, at the September 9th, 2021 board meeting.
I'll read the findings. Based upon the foregoing documentation, testimony, the zoning board of appeals makes the following findings. Number one, the subject premises is located on Oneida Lake, and the neighbors, Mr. Zarnecki and Mr. Hungate, are disputing over numerous property issues, including the nature of the fence versus trellis with planer box. The homes of Mr. Zarnecki and Mr. Hungate are located in close proximity to one another. Mr. Zarnecki installed and constructed a structure material between 4 inches and 1 foot from the Hungate's house, right along the property line. The structure material built by Mr. Zarnecki has numerous wooden posts, which are installed approximately 4 feet into the ground, and the structure is not readily movable as a result, i.e. the structure is permanent in nature. The structure material is approximately 6 feet high, made with wooden boards. The structure material are approximately 20 feet in length and runs along the property line. Mr. Zarnecki has testified that the intent of the structure material is to prevent Mr. Hungate and other users of his property from walking through or onto or into Mr. Zarnecki's backyard. Mr. Zarnecki further testified that he has become frustrated by Mr. Hungate and users of his property walking through the Zarnecki's property. Notwithstanding the lack of a definition of fence in the town's zoning code regulations, the common features of a definition of a fence include the construction out of wood or other material, marking of a property boundary, and to control access. Number 10 is noted above. The nature of the construction of the materials installed by Mr. Zarnecki, wooden posts installed 4 feet into the ground, wood board backing 20 feet in length along the property line, approximately 6 feet tall, and the stated purpose intent of the construction to control, prevent access to Zarnecki's property support the conclusion that the structure materials installed on Mr. Zarnecki's property line is a fence subject to the Town of Sullivan zoning code regulations. Now therefore be it resolved that the Town of Sullivan Zoning Board of Appeals hereby agrees with the zoning code officer interpretation of the Town of Sullivan zoning law and determines that the construction of materials on Mr. Zarnecki's property is a fence subject to the zoning code regulations of the Town of Sullivan.
Thank you, Mike.
So Cliff moved it and Terry seconded.
Can I just add something, or just, I know,
Public,
okay, I can't then, okay.
yeah, unless.
There's an error in the resolution, that's all I'm saying, but that's fine. I'm not arguing, I'm just,
Yeah,
that's fine, I'll keep quiet.
Is there anything that the board wishes to amend in those findings based on the testimony at the last meeting?
I disagree with the phrasing of the control, prevent access to the property. So I went by there today at everybody's recommendations. I hadn't been there to get better perspective. And quite frankly, your question that started the thing with the steps, or the planters, that are those steps or are those planters the pre-existing things? The fact that those are steps, there's still just as much access to the backyard as there was before this fence / planter was put in place. And in fact, the planter portion of this is actually behind the bushes that were already there. So in the context of, because that was where that was where I got stuck last month, because I didn't want to call it a fence last month, except until you read the definition of controlling traffic and creating a boundary. Like, that's tough to get past. Except, looking at it, it's neither obstructing movement nor controlling a boundary. It's behind bushes that are already there, and the steps that are pre-existing have full access to the backyard. The fence does not obstruct those steps. So in the context of this dispute, with people trespassing through from one property to another, it's not, that movement is not impinged. Not as I saw it today.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Good point.
But I do believe Mr. Zarnacki did state that it was,
That was his
the
intention.
intention was to, I mean, I don't know where we heard it from, but I thought that.
I don't believe he stated that at the last meeting.
Okay.
I think at the last meeting, it was communicated that that's what he had told Larry when Larry talked to him at the site. But Larry wasn't
Correct.
here last month.
Correct.
So we heard that from somebody else. Is that what he told you when you went out to meet with him?
Well, it was, he was just getting tired of renters just going over his property all the time.
Had you had complaints about that prior?
No.
Or is this the first time you've been called out to the property was when
First.
Mr. Hungate contacted you?
Correct.
So, item number 7 on the resolution, potentially the board could amend that.
Or strike it, because he didn't testify that to us.
But there could, I guess just potentially the board received information that the intent of the structure, but it's up to the board.
Well, that's why I wanted the letter from Larry, because I wanted to see if Larry specified that in the letter to us, and I don't believe that he did make that statement. He gave the history of what was going on with the property. If I'm understanding this correctly, Larry, when you went out to inspect the situation after Mr. Hungate's complaint, you spoke with Mr. Zarnecki, and he gave you the history of what was going on with the property.
Did I speak, I didn't speak to you?
We spoke on the phone. It
Right.
was only
Okay.
after I received.
It was afterwards.
Yes.
So you went out and viewed the property, saw what was there, made your determination, sent the notice of violation, and then he contacted you,
Correct.
and in that conversation, he gave you the background of what was going on.
Correct.
Well, he does say, thus a fence or trellis was installed by Mr. Zarnecki to prevent access on his property.
And that is part of the record that.
Right.
So.
Is that stated intent or assumed?
I think 8,
I mean, my point earlier, it's a moot point because it does neither.
I would leave 8, but I would take out 7.
Say that again, you take out 7.
I would take out 7 and I would strike the finding that says Mr. Zarnecki testified that the intent of the structure material is to prevent Mr. Hungate and other users of his property from walking through or into Mr. Zarnecki's backyard. And I will keep 8, which says Mr. Zarnecki testified that he has become frustrated by Mr. Hungate and users of his property walking through the Zarnecki property.
So you're making that as a motion?
So
So strike,
Cliff made the motion, or, yeah, so Cliff would make a motion to amend.
You're saying the person that
Cliff
makes
made
the
the original
motion,
motion.
nobody can amend it except the
Well,
person?
he should make he should make the motion to amend
I
his
thought everybody
previous.
could amend.
What if I don't want to? Well, you don't have to then.
No.
That's what I would recommend.
Based on the head nod from him, I don't know, maybe we take them both out. It's not gonna matter to me in the definition. It's a good point, but I still think it's a fence. I'd also add I think it would almost block somebody from escaping from that window in a fire in the neighboring house.
Did Bill Tingle look at it?
And it's not their fault that it's so close, but years ago, I mean, it's close. You look at that window, you don't.
One of the
get
things
out.
that we mentioned the last meeting, and I'm
Said I
sorry
couldn't
nobody
get out.
reached out to you, was the idea of having Bill Kindle look at it. Because if it's a fire safety issue, in his opinion, then it doesn't matter if we call it a fence or if we call it a trellis. He would have the authority to just say, that can't be that close to a window.
Oh, that's why there's a 5-foot building code.
Right. That's why you can't put
Right.
anything within 5 feet of another
Yeah.
structure.
And that one's somehow 1 foot, you know?
Or less in some way.
Yeah.
But the building code also recognizes that it only deals with your structure to the property line. It has nothing to do with what's on the other side of the property line.
So is there a
So
motion?
we have a motion, but we're looking for amendment or not, and we've had a suggestion, striking 7, leaving 8, or striking both 7, 8. So I am looking for some direction.
I would, I mean, 7 and 8 pretty much say the same thing.
So are you making a motion?
I made the motion to take both of them out if that's not what the record states from our public meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion to strike 7 and 8 in the findings. We have a second for Mr. Kevel. Do we have any further discussion? All right, all in favor of striking 7 and 8, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, unanimous.
There's a pending motion on the floor to approve the, so the resolution as amended by member Wheels.
And I would like clarification. You mentioned that it's for planter and trellis, quote, fence/fence. Are we allowing the planter? Because we have nothing in our town code for planters nor in the.
So the way that this was, the way that we discussed it last month with John, the way that this was presented, we are being asked if the structure that stands there right now is a fence, as it stands right now. You've got 3 that have said yes. So the structure as it stands right now with the trellis on top of the planter boxes is a fence. What is it if you take the trellis off? It's a new question, and that will go back to you for an initial determination. I know what my opinion is, if it's level with the ground.
And I guess, I know our job is here to determine whether it's a trellis or a fence, but, I mean, there's some difficulty for the neighbors, and to save further trouble, I don't know if we can have some discussion about what we think is allowable or not. I don't know if I'm looking at Rich, you know, I mean, I don't want these people to waste their time, you know, trying different things, coming back and forth, you know, so I don't, if we can have a intelligent discussion of what we think, or we just gotta wait until the cards are dealt to us.
It's like, you know, to the extent that they're having boundary disputes or property disputes, that's not a concern of the town unless there is something that formally comes before this board, which was triggered by Larry's notice of violation and the subsequent application for interpretation. So until that happens, there's no other jurisdiction of this board to, you know, weigh in on activities of these properties.
Right, and clarification of the codes, I mean, the Zarnakis, they're allowed to plant bushes right on their property line. Correct? They can plant anything right on their property line.
They could, you could plant tall cedars in those boxes, if you will, and that would be permissible, right?
Well, we don't know if those boxes are a fence or not.
Well, the boxes, if they're at ground level, are not a fence.
Mike's right, that's a totally different question. We're getting to questions 3, 4, and 5 that have not been presented to us. We have one question presented to us, and we can't go beyond that. If we go
It's a
beyond
box,
that,
and I.
we're out of order.
He
because it
can-
has to be.
He can talk to him about it,
Yeah,
because he's the one who makes the initial determination.
we cannot have an official determination on a question that has not been posed to us.
So just one point of clarification, item which was previously item 10 or current item 10, on the second page there is another reference to the intent to control, prevent access. I don't know if that needed to be further amended. Again, there is a document from Larry in the record about the idea of preventing access to the property, so I don't know if that would require further amendment in the board's estimation.
think portions of 10 needs to get struck. We don't know if that was quoted or assumed.
The problem with, for me, just my opinion, my problem with 7 and 8 is that it said that Mr. Zarnicki testified. It said that he said that to us. He did not. Number 10 does not.
It says, and the stated purpose intent of the construction quote with Mr. Zarnicki's name one line above it. So it's clear that 10 is clearly implying that he stated the purpose and intent of the construction.
I could go either way with that one.
I disagree with it.
Okay. So you're making a motion that you want to strike part of 10?
It's up to Cliff.
Yeah, I'm not allowed to make the motion.
I don't think, I think you are.
You can.
Yeah, well, and then I make a motion to strike, because we already had a second discussion, and then, I mean, most of 10, about the only parts of 10 that I agree with are the actual listing of the parameters. The 4-foot post, approximately 6 foot.
So you would just take out in the stated purpose from in the stated purpose to the end of the parenthetical.
Right. Yep.
It's just that line.
Yep.
Does anybody second that?
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nay? Signify by saying aye.
Aye. Sorry.
Okay, so it is struck. So we, on the findings, we struck part of 10 and 7 and 8. Any further discussion on the resolution as amended? Okay, all in favor of passing the motion, the resolution as amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
Nay.
Okay, the resolution was passed 4-1.
I can say nay too.
What now?
I'd also say nay.
Okay. So Cliff
Yes.
made the motion originally, correct?
Terry seconded.
Okay.
Then there was the 2 amendments. First to take out 7 and 8,
Got all that.
and then to take out parts of 10.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You got any questions?
Okay, thank you. Thanks for your time.
Ma'am.
So, just quick, it was Steve, yes, Cliff, yes, Mike, no, Brian, no, Terry, yes.
Correct. So I did check it online, and I think, and I don't have my old code with me. I don't know if the old code is in existence anywhere with the old schedule, but I'm about 99% sure that the old schedule, this section that gives the side setbacks and the front and rear setbacks, set at its heading, setbacks. This says minimum yard dimensions.
That's what the code states. They got rid of setback.
Because minimum yard dimensions is like how wide the yard can be not where structures can be put on it. Minimum yard dimensions is not the same thing as a setback, I don't think. Like, language-wise, that
Would
doesn't,
confuse me.
that doesn't make any sense.
It does, you know, let's see.
Because we have minimum dimensions, right? We have minimum lot size, we have minimum frontage width. And that's one part of the schedule. It's a whole other part of the schedule for the side
Do you have
setbacks.
this?
Am I wrong?
Do you have this kind of your copy? I said I screwed up.
I was so used to the old code that I never paid attention to what that was saying until I was just looking to find the right part.
Well, technically, this isn't like a new code.
Yeah, yours is as bad as mine.
The yard dimensions are listed under the zoning schedule. The narrative states that you cannot build within the front yard or a side yard or a rear yard.
I don't have that schedule on this copy. Got a good copy. But the
That-
new zoning law is still pending.
Yeah, I know. It would be nice if they would get off their,
Not that it really matters. Normally when we do one of these questionnaires, it has to be signed, you know. There's no place for a signature. I don't know how important that is, that.
I can resend this.
Okay, well, I just signed this.
Okay, that's fine. I'll,
Cause I deleted the parts and, you know.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, that just needs to get filed with the town clerk.
Okay, so I'm gonna talk to you about that,
Okay.
because I didn't know anything about that resolution.
We just,
Just did
Brought
it
it.
before I got here.
so yeah, we can talk
we
about that.
do appreciate that that was drafted. That was well played.
Yeah, thank you. Probably saves 3 hours worth of shit for him.
Yeah.
Okay, the 50 by 50 pole barn.
Alright, I've got the sheet, we're the lead agency, type 2, negative declaration. Other undesirable change would be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties. I say no, it's not even really a question. Other benefits sought by applicant could be achieved by a feasible alternative. He can make it smaller, but he doesn't want to, and there's.
And also there was trees, there's trees in the way that he'd like to keep.
Yep.
And it is very significant. Not really requested.
Okay, whether the requested variance is substantial, yes, but it is a side lot situation. Side lot, corner lot.
You could put something in there with bring the rear setback into play.
Okay, would the variance have an adverse impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood? No. Whether the alleged difficulty was self-created? Yes, not a determining factor. Factor. Okay, the ZBA, after taking into consideration the above 5 factors, finds that the benefit to the applicant does outweigh the detriment to the neighborhood or community, and therefore the variance would be approved. And I'll submit that as a motion.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion?
Brian, did you second it?
Yes, ma'am. Sorry, my head was down.
That's okay.
Mumbling.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye. Somebody wants to- So you like putting your kids to bed now? I didn't say anything. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous.
This one's a little weird too. The second column, minimum lot size, width in square feet. How do you get a square feet width dimension? Width would be linear, right? So your width is allowed to be 150 square feet? That's a mess.
Yeah.
That's the kind of crap that got us in trouble with Quarry Road. Those stupid little things like that. That's newer to me, I believe. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe that's not what I've been told back. That matches what's online, on the E-code. Doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, I don't have that on my copy, so I just,
It's awesome, isn't it?
I'll have to pull like the old one, you probably still have a copy.
All right, minutes from last month.
Yeah, well, Steve signed that one, they exceeded it, but I'll clean up the language and just look over it and send it to you as well. But just follow that's how it worked. There should have been here, there should have something here, yeah, there's 4 for here.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
In the minutes.
Who seconded?
See, I waited until you were distracted, see what I did there?
I was talking.
I was testing you, make sure you're on your game.
So that.
All in favor of accepting the minutes as written, signify by saying aye.
Aye. Larry, our church across the street is planning to do a drive-through like they did last year as production for Christmas. Last year, COVID was crazy. This whole building was shut down during the holidays. There was nobody to talk to or find out if you guys wanted us to get a permit. Is that something that we need to, or you would prefer that we secure some sort of permit for it? Last year, Todd Hood sent a couple sheriff's deputies the evenings that we did it. I don't know if we paid them or not, never asked. But we had traffic control set up with the sheriff's deputies. I expect that we'll probably pursue the same kind of arrangement with them.
That's just a question for John.
Becker, all right, I'll talk to him, see what he wants us to do. Okay.
Got anything for next month?
Yes.
What do we have? Just
Dollar General, I will get this stuff out to you, but Dollar General, Larry, do you wanna help me with this? Dollar General is on Route 5.
Are you listening to this, guys? This is
Nope, I wasn't listening.
Dollar General is wants to build a new store on Route 5.
Right across from Tops.
No.
Yep. And they're coming to the zoning board after being at the planning board because it says a certain amount of parking spaces, and they only want like 36 parking spaces, so they have to come to you.
They're required to have more than that, and they're asking them for a variance.
109 parking spaces are required, they're proposing 36.
No, I've heard different rumors. No, they're supposed to close the one in town, but I've heard two different stories, I don't know.
I don't really know what they're doing.
That they're closing the one in town?
They will. I'll tell you what they do. They throw up cheap, crappy buildings and use them.
Yeah, let me turn that off, please.
Make a motion to close the meeting.
Thank you. Who's second?
Second, all in favor, close the meeting, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We're looking for a green